Picture this. You're sitting across the dinner table from someone you love. At least you used to love them the way you imagined love should feel. Safe, encouraging, mutual. But now, every word feels like a test. Every glance is a measurement. The air is thick with criticism, with suspicion, with the constant sense that you are not enough. You try harder. You compromise more. You explain yourself endlessly. Yet somehow, the harder you try, the smaller you feel. Or imagine walking into work each morning and bracing yourself, not for the challenges of the job, but for the cutting remark from a colleague, the manipulation of a boss who knows exactly how to press your buttons, or the subtle ways your dignity gets chipped away day after day. You tell yourself, I can handle it. But the truth is, it's handling you. We don't like to admit it. But many men find themselves in toxic relationships. Sometimes it's with a partner, sometimes with a friend, sometimes with a boss or even family. The signs are different, but the result is the same. A slow erosion of your spirit, control disguised as love, jealousy that masquerades as care, words that don't just criticize but diminish. And the longer you stay, the more your sense of self begins to evaporate. Here's what makes it even harder. Society rarely acknowledges men as victims. You've probably heard it said 100 times that men should tough it out, man up, or deal with it. So you stay silent. You carry the weight. Maybe you tell yourself it's for the kids. Maybe you convince yourself it's not that bad. Maybe you accept the loneliness of enduring something you know is crushing you because the alternative, walking away, feels scarier. But deep down, you know the truth. This isn't strength, it's surrender, and it comes at a high cost. The cost is your peace. The cost is your self-respect. Sometimes the cost is your mental health, leaving you anxious, depressed, unable to recognize the man staring back at you in the mirror. So let me ask you a blunt question. If you continue living this way for another year, another 5 years, another decade, who will you become? What kind of example will you set for your children, your friends, the people who look up to you? And more importantly, how much of yourself will be left? There is a way out, and it's not about fighting harder, yelling louder, or bending further until you break. The way out is rooted in an ancient philosophy that has guided men through far darker times than ours, Stoicism. The Stoics knew all about poisonous influences, manipulative people, and the dangers of losing yourself in the noise of others. They spoke often about guarding your mind, protecting your dignity, and setting boundaries that no one could cross. Epictetus, once a slave, understood that no one could own his mind unless he allowed them to. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by flattery and deceit, reminded himself daily to avoid the corruption of toxic influence. And Seneca warned against wasting life on people who pull you away from virtue rather than strengthen it. Their wisdom is not theory, it is survival. And it is as urgent now as it was 2,000 years ago. In this episode, we are going to uncover 5 Stoic lessons that will help you identify toxic relationships, establish firm boundaries, and reclaim your peace of mind. These are not abstract ideas. They are practical tools you can use the next time someone tries to control you, diminish you, or make you feel trapped. Stay with me until the end, because the final question, inspired by Marcus Aurelius himself, will force you to confront whether the relationships you're in are truly worth the only life you've been given. So let's begin. We like to believe that relationships are the foundation of life. We tell ourselves that love conquers all, that friendship is always supportive, that family is unshakable, and that colleagues will treat us with respect if we do the same. But step into the reality of adulthood, and you see how fragile those ideals can be. Many people, men especially, wake up one day to realize that the relationships they've invested in are not nourishing them, but draining them, The truth is, toxic relationships are everywhere. Sometimes they look obvious: shouting matches, insults, intimidation. But often, they wear subtler disguises. They appear in the partner who constantly questions your loyalty, the friend who only calls when they need something, the colleague who undermines you in front of others but smiles in private. They creep in through jealousy disguised as care, manipulation disguised as love, or criticism disguised as just being honest. Over time, the disguise wears thin. But the damage has already been done. What makes this especially dangerous for men is silence. Research shows that men, too, are victims of toxic relationships and even abuse. Yet society rarely acknowledges this. A man who says he feels controlled by his partner risks being laughed at. A man who admits to emotional abuse might be told to toughen up. And so, many stay quiet, swallowing their pain, believing it is somehow unmanly to admit they are being hurt. This silence becomes the breeding ground where toxic dynamics grow unchecked. Why do men stay? There are many reasons. Some stay for their children, believing that enduring the pain is better than disrupting the family. Some stay because they fear loneliness more than mistreatment. Some stay because their self-esteem has been so eroded that they believe they don't deserve better. And some stay because walking away feels like failure, a bruise to the ego that society tells them must never be shown. But the costs are real, and they are heavy. Mentally, toxic relationships create anxiety, depression, and chronic stress. Men in these situations often describe a sense of walking on eggshells, never knowing when the next criticism will land or what invisible rule they'll be punished for breaking. Physically, the toll shows up in sleepless nights, tense shoulders, fatigue that no amount of rest seems to cure. Spiritually, the toll may be the greatest of all: a slow erosion of dignity, purpose, and the belief that life can be better. And the issue isn't limited to personal life. Toxicity spills into the workplace too. A boss who constantly belittles, a coworker who undermines your contributions, a culture where bullying or gossip is normalized. These environments wear you down in the same way an abusive partner does. They chip away at confidence, blur your sense of self, and leave you questioning your worth. In both cases, the problem is not just the other person's behavior. The deeper issue is the absence of healthy boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are lines that define where you end and another person begins. They protect your time, your energy, your dignity. Without them, you leave the door wide open for manipulation, exploitation, and abuse. When you don't clearly articulate what you will and won't tolerate, toxic people fill the void. They test limits, push further, and slowly train you to accept less than you deserve. The absence of boundaries doesn't just allow toxicity, it invites it. Think about it. How many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no? How many times have you allowed someone to speak to you in a way that made your chest tighten, but you brushed it off for the sake of peace? How many times have you convinced yourself that enduring disrespect is better than risking confrontation? Each of these moments may feel small, but collectively, they build a pattern. And that pattern is what toxic people exploit. This is where the danger deepens. Because the longer you accept toxicity, the harder it becomes to see yourself clearly. You begin to believe the insults. You begin to think the control is normal. You begin to internalize the idea that your feelings don't matter. And once you start believing these lies, it's no longer just about the relationship. It's about your identity. But here's the part many overlook. Enduring toxic relationships doesn't only harm you. It harms everyone around you. Children who watch a parent constantly diminished often grow up struggling with their own boundaries. Friends drift away when they see you consumed by a destructive partnership. Teams at work lose potential when toxic leaders go unchallenged. The ripple effect is enormous. What feels like a private struggle is actually a social one, affecting families, communities, and workplaces at large. And yet, despite all this pain, many men remain. Why? Because leaving or changing a toxic relationship requires courage, clarity, and a deep sense of self-worth. And these are exactly the things toxic relationships erode over time. It becomes a vicious cycle. The relationship destroys your confidence, and the lack of confidence keeps you trapped in the relationship. This is why philosophy matters. Because without a higher framework, without principles that transcend the pain of the moment, it's easy to stay stuck. It's easy to tell yourself this is just how life is. Or maybe I deserve this, or at least it's not worse. But the Stoics did not accept this kind of resignation. They believed that the dignity of the human soul is too precious to be surrendered to another's cruelty. They believed that freedom is found in the strength to govern yourself, not in the approval of others. So let me ask you, are the relationships in your life nourishing your growth? Or are they draining your spirit? Are you surrounded by people who call you higher, or by people who pull you lower? If you continue exactly as you are today, where will you be in 5 years? Stronger and freer, or smaller and more broken? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are necessary ones. And this is where Stoicism steps in. Not to comfort you with easy answers, but to challenge you with principles that cut through the fog of manipulation and fear. In the next part, we'll explore why Stoicism offers such a powerful way out, and how it can give you the tools to face toxicity with clarity, courage, and unshakable self-respect. When you're caught in a toxic relationship, clarity becomes the first casualty. You feel tangled in confusion. Is it me, or is it them? Am I overreacting? Or am I truly being mistreated? And because you live inside the fog, it's hard to see a way out. This is why philosophy matters. It cuts through the fog. It gives you a framework larger than your immediate emotions, a compass when you've lost your sense of direction. Stoicism was born in a world as chaotic as ours. The early Stoics lived through political upheaval, corruption, wars, and social decadence. They asked, how can a person stay steady when everything around them pulls toward chaos? Their answer was not to try to control the world, but to master themselves. That principle applies just as much to toxic relationships today as it did to Roman courts and marketplaces 2,000 years ago. The Stoics taught for cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Each has something vital to say about toxic dynamics. Wisdom allows you to see the relationship for what it is, not what you wish it to be. Courage gives you the strength to speak, to set boundaries, or even to walk away when necessary. Justice reminds you that respecting yourself is not selfish. It is the rightful order of human dignity. And temperance teaches you not to overreact in anger, but to respond with measured strength. Epictetus, who had once been a slave, knew the meaning of inner freedom. His body had been under the control of others, but his mind, he insisted, was always his own. He told his students, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus himself can conquer my will." For men today, trapped in relationships where their dignity feels chained, this is a radical reminder. No one owns your mind, your judgment, or your values unless you hand them over. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor, faced constant manipulation and flattery. He wrote in his meditations to beware of those who would corrupt his soul and to live according to reason, not appetite or approval. If even an emperor needed daily reminders not to surrender to toxic influence, how much more do we? Seneca warned against wasting life in the service of those who diminish us. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Think of that in the context of a toxic relationship. Every day you stay silent, every day you endure mistreatment, is a piece of your finite life handed over to someone who does not deserve it. This is why Stoicism offers such a powerful way out. It doesn't promise to make others kinder or gentler. It doesn't teach you how to manipulate them back. It teaches you something far more profound: how to guard your mind, protect your dignity, and reclaim your freedom. It reminds you that your worth does not depend on how others treat you, but on how faithfully you live according to virtue. And this is the bridge to where we go next. Because philosophy isn't useful unless it's practical. So, in the next part, we'll look at 5 Stoic lessons, 5 guiding questions that you can carry into the battlefield of your relationships. Each one will help you see more clearly, stand more firmly, and, if needed, walk away more freely. When you find yourself in a toxic relationship, one of the first things that disappears is perspective. You start thinking that if only you said the right words, explained yourself better, or tried just a little harder, the other person would finally change. That if you just kept the peace a little longer, they would eventually understand. And so you pour your energy into fixing them, into predicting their moods, into walking on eggshells so carefully that you barely notice how much of yourself you've given away. But what if the truth is simpler, even harsher, than that? What if you were never meant to control them at all? Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who knew both slavery and freedom, began his teaching with a line that has echoed across centuries: some things are within our control, and some things are not. It sounds obvious, almost trivial, until you realize how often we forget it. In the heat of a toxic relationship, we forget every time we believe we can change someone else's jealousy, someone else's anger, someone else's manipulation. We forget every time we place our peace of mind in their hands, hoping they will treat it gently. But they don't, and the reason isn't always malice. It's simply that we have asked the impossible: to control what has never belonged to us. So what does belong to us? Our judgments, our choices, our boundaries. We can't stop another person from criticizing us, but we can decide whether their words will define us. We can't stop them from raising their voice, but we can decide whether we will stay in the room or walk away. We can't control their moods, but we can control whether we bend ourselves into knots trying to appease them. This is the first act of reclaiming power, remembering that your energy is wasted when it chases what is outside your control. Think about the weather. No matter how hard you wish, you cannot stop the rain, but you can choose to carry an umbrella. The rain is their behavior. The umbrella is your response. You are not helpless, but neither are you all-powerful. You are responsible for what you can actually do, and liberated from what you cannot. Ask yourself honestly, how much of your life has been spent trying to manage the unmanageable? How many sleepless nights, anxious days, and silent compromises have been fueled by the illusion that if you just worked harder, things would change? What if you could let go of that illusion? What if you could stand in the middle of the storm and say, their behavior is theirs, but my response is mine? That is the heart of the first Stoic lesson. It doesn't remove the difficulty of a toxic relationship, but it removes the chains that keep you bound to it. Once you see clearly what is yours to carry and what is not, you can stop exhausting yourself in the impossible. And in that moment, even if nothing else changes, you have already begun to reclaim your freedom. One of the cruelest effects of a toxic relationship is the way it quietly erodes your sense of worth. Rarely does it happen all at once. It begins with a small comment you let slide, a criticism you laugh off, an insult you tell yourself isn't worth reacting to. You swallow it because you don't want conflict, because you want to keep the peace, because you hope that if you let it go, things will improve. But slowly, almost without realizing it, you begin to train yourself to accept less. This is where dignity comes in. Marcus Aurelius, who carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders, reminded himself daily, if you respect yourself, You will be respected. He didn't mean that people would always treat you well if you carried yourself with dignity. He meant that no matter how they treated you, the respect you show yourself sets the tone for your life. Without it, you drift into the habit of making excuses for mistreatment. With it, you draw a line in the sand that no one can erase. Think about the last time someone belittled you. Maybe it was a partner who mocked your ambitions. Maybe it was a boss who embarrassed you in front of your team. Maybe it was a friend who disguised their insults as jokes. Did you stay quiet? Did you tell yourself it wasn't worth making a scene? And if you did, how did you feel afterward? Chances are, it wasn't peace you felt. It was the sting of betraying yourself. Honoring your dignity doesn't always mean storming out of the room or delivering a dramatic speech. More often, it's quieter, calmer, but firmer. It's looking someone in the eye and saying, "I don't accept being spoken to that way." It's ending the conversation when insults replace dialogue. It's reminding yourself in the moment, "I am not here to be diminished. I am here to live with integrity." The Stoics believed that external events could never truly harm you unless you allowed them to corrupt your inner life. In a toxic relationship, every insult is an attempt at corruption. It's an attempt to make you see yourself as smaller, weaker, unworthy. And the moment you start believing that story, they win. But when you honor your dignity, you take back authorship of your life. You tell yourself and the world that you will not play the role of the diminished man. There's a paradox here. Many men think that staying silent in the face of disrespect is strength, that biting their tongue shows discipline. But silence without boundaries isn't strength, it's surrender. True strength is the ability to respond without rage, to defend your dignity without losing your temper. It's the calm but unshakable presence of a man who knows his worth. So ask yourself, in this relationship, am I honoring my dignity? Or am I trading it away piece by piece? If your answer stings, let it sting, because that pain is the signal that something has to change. And once you commit to honoring your dignity, you will find that others may not always applaud, but they will begin to sense something different in you. Something immovable, something that cannot be bought, manipulated, or shamed. Because here is the truth, the world often treats you at the level you treat yourself. When you carry yourself with respect, you radiate it. When you let go of dignity, you invite others to do the same. Stoicism reminds you that you are the guardian of your worth, and that role cannot be outsourced. No partner, no boss, no friend has the right to define your value unless you hand them the pen. So hold on to it. Because dignity is not just about how you feel today. It's about the man you are becoming tomorrow. Peace is one of the most fragile treasures you possess. You can spend years building it through discipline, reflection, and careful living, only to see it eroded piece by piece in a toxic relationship. A harsh word here, a manipulative demand there, and suddenly your mind is no longer your own. You spend your days anticipating someone else's moods, managing their reactions, and reshaping yourself to fit their expectations. And before long, you realize that your peace has been outsourced to someone who does not value it. This is why boundaries are essential, not as weapons, not as punishments, but as shields. They are the invisible lines that tell the world where you end and another begins. Without them, you are exposed to every storm. With them, you stand firm, not because others change, but because you refuse to be moved from your center. The Stoics spoke often of temperance, the art of balance. The refusal to let passion sweep you away. Boundaries are temperance in action. They say, "I will engage with you, but not at the cost of my sanity. I will listen, but not at the cost of my dignity. I will love, but not at the cost of losing myself." Boundaries are not selfish. They are acts of self-preservation. And in the world of toxic relationships, they're acts of survival. Imagine a partner who raises their voice every time you disagree. Without boundaries, you argue back or shrink into silence, both of which give them power. With boundaries, you calmly state, "I will not continue this conversation while being yelled at," and you leave the room. The difference is profound. One response feeds the cycle, the other interrupts it. One drains you, the other preserves your peace. Or think of a workplace where your boss expects late-night responses. Without boundaries, you answer emails at midnight, resenting every word. With boundaries, you stop responding after a set time, because your evenings belong to rest, family, or solitude. The job may still demand, but your soul no longer bends. The power of boundaries is not that they change other people. Often, they don't. The power is that they change you. They remind you daily that your peace is worth protecting, that you have the right to decide how much of yourself you give away. And that reminder, repeated over time, begins to rebuild the confidence toxic relationships erode. The Stoics practiced journaling as a way to keep themselves honest. You can use the same method for boundaries. Write down each moment when your peace was disturbed, and beside it, write the response you wish you had given, the boundary you wish you had enforced. Over time, this practice turns imagination into habit, and habit into strength. Ask yourself, what boundaries, if I set them today, would bring me immediate relief? Maybe it's refusing to answer the phone after a certain hour. Maybe it's ending conversations that turn insulting. Maybe it's no longer explaining yourself when you've already made your decision. The specifics will differ, but the principle is the same. Your peace matters. And if you don't protect it, no one else will. Boundaries may feel uncomfortable at first. Toxic people will resist them, push against them, accuse you of being cold or selfish. But that resistance is proof of their necessity. If someone cannot respect your boundaries, it is not a reflection of your unkindness. It is a reflection of their lack of respect. So begin now. Identify the places where your peace leaks away and draw the line. Not to punish, not to control, but to preserve the quiet strength within you. Because peace is not a luxury. It is the foundation of a life well lived. And without it, every other effort collapses. The Stoics measured the value of life not in wealth, not in pleasure, not in status, but in virtue. For them, virtue meant living in harmony with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These were not lofty ideals meant only for philosophers. In robes, they were the practical compass for everyday living. Every decision, every relationship, every action was to be tested against these four pillars. If it upheld them, it was worth keeping. If it violated them, it was worth discarding. Now, take that lens and hold it up to your own relationships. Ask yourself, does this partnership, this friendship, this workplace dynamic align with virtue? Or does it pull me further away from it? Start with wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to see reality clearly, to call things by their true name in a toxic relationship. Wisdom is often the first casualty. You convince yourself that manipulation is just passion, that cruelty is just honesty, that control is just love. But wisdom refuses these disguises. It says plainly, if a relationship blinds you to truth, it does not align with virtue. Then there is courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act rightly in spite of it. A toxic relationship often trains you in cowardice, not by making you weak, but by making you afraid to speak, afraid to set limits, afraid to lose what little comfort the relationship provides. But if staying requires you to abandon your courage, then by Stoic standards, it is not a relationship worth keeping. Justice is next. Justice is about giving each person their due, and that includes yourself. A just relationship is one where both sides honor each other's dignity. A toxic one demands that you sacrifice your fairness to keep the other person satisfied, that you give endlessly while receiving nothing in return. The Stoics would call that an injustice. Not just against you, but against the order of things. And finally, temperance. Temperance is balance. Moderation, the refusal to be consumed by extremes. A healthy relationship helps you maintain it. A toxic one pushes you into constant overreaction. Anger one moment, guilt the next, exhaustion always. If you are always on the edge, always losing balance, then temperance is missing. Seneca put it simply: associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. That's the Stoic test of relationship. Does this connection make you wiser, braver, fairer, more balanced? Or does it drag you into the opposite, into blindness, fear, injustice, and chaos? This question cuts deep because it removes all the excuses. It doesn't matter how long you've known them. It doesn't matter how much history you share. It doesn't matter what they say on the good days. If the overall pattern of the relationship is pulling you away from virtue, then it is pulling you away from the very purpose of life. And if you stay, you are not just enduring hardship, you are betraying your own reason for being. So pause and reflect. Does this relationship align with virtue? Or have you been trading virtue away piece by piece for the illusion of comfort or security? The answer may sting, but it is also clarifying, because once you know the truth, you can no longer pretend. You must choose, stay smaller, or walk toward the man you are meant to be. The final question is the most sobering and perhaps the most liberating. The Stoics practiced what they call memento mori, the reminder of death, not as a morbid obsession, but as a way to live more fully. Marcus Aurelius would write to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." When you place death at the edge of your vision, suddenly everything that seemed tolerable, everything you thought you could endure a little longer, comes into sharper focus. So ask yourself, if today were my last day on earth, would I choose to remain in this relationship? Imagine waking up with that awareness. Would you still waste your final hours walking on eggshells, explaining yourself for the 100th time, absorbing insults, or shrinking to fit someone else's control? Would you spend the precious, unrepeatable gift of a last day in the presence of a person who drains your spirit? Or would you want to spend it differently, with people who lift you up, in places that bring peace, doing things that remind you of who you truly are? The clarity of this question is brutal. It strips away the excuses. Suddenly, maybe tomorrow things will get better, loses its grip. At least it's not as bad as it could be. Sounds hollow. When viewed through the lens of mortality, the cost of staying in a toxic relationship is revealed for what it truly is: wasted life. No one, lying on their deathbed, wishes they had endured more disrespect. No one longs for more years of compromise, manipulation, or fear. The regrets people carry are almost always the same: time wasted, courage left unused, dignity surrendered. The Stoics knew this, which is why they urged daily reflection on death, not to depress us, but to wake us up to the urgency of living well. If your answer to this question is no, if you would not choose to spend your last day in this relationship, then why spend today, because here is the harsh truth. You don't know how many days you have left. None of us do. Every day could be the last. And the time you waste in toxicity is time you can never recover. This does not mean you have to walk away immediately from every imperfect relationship. All human connections are flawed. What it does mean is that you must be honest about the cost. Is this relationship shaping you into a better man? Or is it consuming the limited time you have? If it's the latter, then you are not only enduring pain, you are betraying the gift of life itself, the beauty of memento mori, that it forces clarity. And with clarity comes freedom. When you realize how short life truly is, the fear of being alone or the fear of change loses some of its power, because the greater fear becomes clear. Wasting the only life you have in chains, you do not have to wear dots, so take this question with you. Whisper it to yourself in quiet moments. If today were my last, would I stay? Let it challenge you, let it sting, and let it push you toward the choices that honor your dignity, your peace, and your virtue. Because in the end, life is too brief to give to those who diminish you. It is meant to be lived with courage, with clarity, and with freedom. We have walked through the shadows of toxic relationships and the silent erosion of life without boundaries. We've seen how easily a man can lose himself, not in one grand collapse, but in 1,000 small concessions. And yet, through the wisdom of Stoicism, we've also seen a way out. 5 lessons, 5 guiding questions, form the compass you can carry with you into every relationship, every workplace, every difficult conversation. Each one is simple, each one is practical, and together, they are powerful. The first was, what is truly in my control? A reminder that you cannot command another person's moods or behavior, but you can govern your own choices, your own boundaries, your own response. That clarity alone can free you from endless cycles of frustration. The second was, am I honoring my own dignity? Because every time you let disrespect slide without acknowledgement, you trade away a piece of yourself. Stoicism calls you back to self-respect, to stand calmly but firmly for your worth. The third was, what boundaries protect my peace? In a world of constant intrusion, boundaries are not selfish walls, but shields of temperance. They do not push people away. They keep your spirit intact. The fourth was, does this relationship align with virtue? When measured against wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, many relationships are revealed for what they are, not paths to growth, but snares that drag you backward. And the fifth, the most sobering of all, if today were my last, would I stay in this relationship? Memento mori, the reminder that time is finite, that life is fragile, and that every day wasted in toxicity is a day you will never get back, taken together. These 5 questions are not merely reflections. They are tools. Each one is a blade that cuts through confusion, a light that pierces the fog, a guardrail that keeps you from falling further into compromise. They're the Stoic answer to the quiet suffering that so many endure in silence. But here's the truth. Hearing these lessons is not enough. Knowing them, even admiring them, is not enough. The question now is whether you will live them. Will you carry them with you into the next conversation where someone tries to belittle you? Will you remember them when the guilt of saying no weighs heavy on your chest? Will you use them when you catch yourself making excuses for behavior that should never have been acceptable? The choice is yours, and it always has been. You may not be able to change the other person, but you can change yourself. You can draw boundaries. You can reclaim dignity. You can refuse to trade your virtue for comfort. You can, starting today, live as if your time is sacred, because it is dots. So let me leave you with this. Do not wait. Do not tell yourself that tomorrow you will begin. Do not fall into the illusion that enduring just a little longer is noble. It isn't. Stoicism teaches us that freedom and peace are one in the present moment, in the decision you make right now. And if you want to keep sharpening that clarity, if you want to keep building the kind of inner strength that no toxic relationship can erode, then stay with us here at StoicCraft. This is where philosophy meets the struggles of modern life, where the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus becomes a daily practice, not a distant memory. Subscribe and join a community of people committed to living with dignity, with courage, and with freedom. Because your time is too precious, your peace too fragile, and your worth too great to be wasted in chains.